Welcome everybody to the Digital Nomad Sessions. My name is Mitch Asa, your host, and I have a really exciting guest here with me today. I've got Andi Eaton. She's joining us from Joshua Tree as well. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I am out in Joshua Tree enjoying the California sunshine.
It's not a place that I've visited yet. I've actually not been to the United States yet. That's coming up in 6 weeks, but
Okay.
it's definitely a place that a lot of people tell me to go to for a little bit of grounding, maybe a little bit to escape the city life and to really connect. So yeah, maybe we can dive into that topic another time. But because we
Yeah,
do have a really exciting topic coming up today, and that is how to make a living as a traveling creative. So
yeah,
I'm excited about this. I know a lot of people will as well, and you've got a lot of experience in this space. So let me just introduce you to everybody, and then we'll dive straight in. So Andi's blog Wee Wee is a reflection of her wanderlust-inspired life. She has a gift for sharing everything from conscious living to experiential travel, sprinkled with a bit of mysticism. After publishing her second book, Wonderful, The Modern Bohemian's Guide to Traveling in Style, she's been speaking at retreats around the world on topics of finding and expressing authenticity and self-worth, growing sustainable roots as an artist, and travel as a form of wellness. She works as a brand ambassador and consultant for travel, hospitality, beauty, and gypset-inspired fashion brands, and also partners with tourism boards and agencies. You have a lot going on, Andi.
when you say it, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm kind of busy. Yeah, but it's all stuff I really love. So,
Yeah.
when you're doing what you love, it doesn't feel so crazy, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. And that's probably like the overarching message of what we're sharing here at Digital Nomad Sessions, and bringing together the people who are making it work for their lives, not just, trying to follow what's like the way to make money so you can be a digital nomad. It's like, how can you authentically express yourself into the world and then make money at the same time? So
Yeah.
um, I'm really excited for this. And um, I guess maybe let's start at a higher level with how to make a living as a traveling creative. Um, what does that mean for you? How has that affected your life? Maybe share some examples of others that are doing it as well. And maybe just introduce us to the topic.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll give you a little bit of background on my story and kind of how I found my way into living this life of being a person who travels and is also a creative and has been able to make a living doing those things. I spent about 15 years in the corporate world, and um, I don't take a second of that back. I learned so much from that experience. I worked in marketing and education and operations and sat in on finance meetings and learned so much from that experience. But in about 2014, it occurred to me that 15 years of my life had been devoted to someone else's dream. And I had done a really good job of working on the dreams of that company. But I wasn't really sure what my own dreams even were. So I made a decision that year. I gave a year's notice on my corporate job. And with the blessing of the woman who had been my mentor and my boss, after that year, I left and I made a decision to book a one-way ticket I went to Spain actually. And my commitment to myself was to, during that year's time, to save enough money to get to Spain and not have to freak out to try to make a living right away. So my commitment was, okay, I'm gonna have 6 months of time where I can really figure out. I mean, mostly it was figure out what I was interested in and figure out who I really was and what my authentic expression of me could look like. And so I didn't want to have to wrangle up a bunch of side hustles right away. I really wanted to have the time to sit with myself and figure out what I was into. And my planning for 6 months of not having to work seemed like a really great idea, but the second it started, it was so scary, right? It's like the second the money's not coming in, it's like, oh, right, there's not a paycheck coming ever again until I create that. So while I intended to spend that time really sitting quietly and figuring out who I was authentically and figuring out what my next thing would be, pretty quickly it started occurring to me the things that I thought I could do to make a living. And I started kind of dabbling and testing things out, knowing I had that time, which I suggest to anyone who's ever considering making a leap like that. Like, save every penny you've got, like, stop spending money on Starbucks and fancy shoes and just like put that money in the bank and get ready for setting yourself free in that way. And so that was the year that I really stepped into this new world of being a traveler, and really figuring out how to express my creative gifts. And so those two things came together, and traveling creative is who I am, and that was kind of born. So that's a little bit of the backstory. For me, the first things I decided to do, and this is the same thing that I teach to the students that are in my business school, or when I'm sharing ideas around how to do this for yourself with just people I meet when I'm speaking at retreats, for example. I really took a deep dive into what makes up me authentically. So, like, what my personal values really are. And so, for example, for me, one of my values is the expression of freedom, and that comes through the idea of travel. Another value for me is the idea of exploring ancient wisdoms, like what people are doing in places that I'm visiting. And I also have this like value that is being seen, which when I looked at that, I was like, what does that really mean? But what occurred to me is teaching and writing and creating the blog that I have were ways that I could be seen in the world, but also share these ancient wisdom stories and travel stories. And it really made sense to put those things together. So, like, if I'm meeting someone, for example, at a retreat, and they say, oh, one of the things I've loved my whole life was dance, but right now I work as a graphic designer, and that's just what I decided to do when I went to school. My first words of encouragement are usually, what could you do in the world of dance while you're traveling that could potentially allow you to earn some money? So could you teach classes? Could you set up a profile on Airbnb Adventures and be a guide for that sort of dance experience when you're traveling? And then yes, make some extra money doing your graphic design too, if that's your skill set. But the passion piece, I think we often kind of forget that, like, the things we loved when we were kids and like the things that really make us who we are to the core, we can do those things while traveling, especially while traveling, because our gifts can be expressed and shared all over the world.
Yeah, that's amazing. I really love that. And there's actually so many amazing takeaways in there. I think one question that I get asked a lot, or that when people make a comment on that they want to start working as a digital nomad, or like moving around the world, having some more freedom, starting a business, is like, I don't know what I want to do. And what you're
Yeah.
saying there is you actually gave yourself some space to actually
Yeah.
think about that and allowed that to sort of birth naturally, rather than trying to force something, which is something that a
Yeah.
lot of people don't do. And I think it's really a really important part. And then also, like, another thing you said was just dabbling in little bits of um, something here and there, just to see what resonated most that you were going to follow. So yeah, so many amazing stories within that we could dive into. But I guess, because we don't have hours to speak about all of this, unfortunately, this time.
I could talk about this stuff for hours. Because I want
Absolutely.
people to do this so badly for themselves.
Yeah, 100%. But I guess to keep it down to the lines of the topic, which is how to make a living as a traveling creative.
Yeah.
For the people at home, where would be the best place to start when we need to think about living this lifestyle?
Yeah, so I would start with, well, the first thing I would do is decide what is the thing that I am fully passionate about. So I'll give an example of one of the students that just completed my Conscious Creatives Business School. So she came into the school, and she said, what my passion is, or, a lot of my people are travelers. It makes sense that that's who I would connect to. So she comes into the school and she says, I've just started a travel blog. She's having kind of that freak out of like, I don't know how to build an Instagram following. Is that the only way to do it? Like, just kind of like really questioning her worth in that way. So we talked first about, well, what's the passion that you have that led you to wanting to create this blog? And she said that she had visited, over the course of 2 years, she had visited 50 countries, and she had done so on this tremendously tight budget. So she wanted to start this blog to show others how to do the same sort of travel. So when we looked at that, it kind of niched down to budget travel for a solo female traveler, and she really loved to write, so that's why she started the blog. So her concern was when she came into the school was, but I don't know how to monetize the blog yet, and I need to make money now. I can't wait until the blog has 25,000 views per month before I start getting sponsored deals. So we went through this kind of brainstorm, and this is what I would do with anyone, and this is what I suggest that anyone who's considering ways to make money while traveling, we just went through a brainstorm of what are all the ways that you can make money having the passion of budget travel, solo female travel, and writing. And so we came up with like 7 things that she could do that she hadn't really considered. So like on that list was she had traveled to 50 countries. That's kind of amazing. So the first thing was she could set up a mini course in which she coaches other women that want to set out to do a solo female travel adventure like she had, and she could charge for that. So coaching was something she hadn't considered. She could contact companies that plan travel, or perhaps travel agencies or budget planning firms, and offer to write for their website based on the experience that she had. So she already has this love of writing and experience writing. So working on getting retainers to write for companies that have a bigger budget than the brands that she might be interested in eventually working for with her blog. We talked about she could create an ebook and sell it on Amazon. That would be a great way to help other women do the same type of traveling that she was doing. She had such passion about it. And one of the biggest things that I saw immediately in her was that she should be speaking about this experience that she had of traveling to 50 countries on this super tight budget. And so we put together a pitch deck for her so that she could, while traveling, be pitching to all sorts of different organizations and retreat companies, all sorts of people that might be interested in having her speak, and put together a little rate card for that. And these were all things that she kind of hadn't considered that she could do because she was really stuck on that. My blog isn't big enough yet, and I don't really have a big social following, so who will be interested in me? But the reality was her story and her passion and her skill were incredible. So we really just did a quick brainstorm deep dive into ways she could make money based on that passion. So for anyone who's interested in going out and traveling this way, the first thing I would look at is what are the things that you're incredibly passionate about, that you're super skilled at, that you have a talent for, and map out ways that you can make money. And then at the same time, you need to, put together a basic profit and loss for yourself. Like, okay, I need to make this amount of money. Here's the things I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to spend this amount of money as I'm traveling, and really balance that out to have a good perspective of what you need to be doing to earn money while still allowing yourself to pay the bills that you need to pay while working and traveling at the same time.
Yeah, amazing. I guess that's like one of the great benefits of, working with someone like yourself, Andy, who can help people bounce those ideas and get them past those barriers, because I think it's just a mindset limitation sometimes to get stuck in the story of like the past, right?
Totally.
So yeah, that's amazing. And then maybe let's dive into what you were just talking about there a little bit deeper at the end around a budget. It's very possible for people to start living a digital nomadic life on a very tight budget, like your example just there. However, they still sort of think that they're living in their, cushy $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year job. And typically you're not going to make that much money from, straight out the gate. Sure, there's exceptions, but it sometimes takes a couple of years to get to that point. So when you're talking about budgeting, like I think that's definitely a big component of it. Do you have any more tips around that?
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, the big scary part when you make a leap like that to leave whatever that job might be and to take this kind of new approach is not really knowing what the money's going to look like. And oftentimes, I definitely think it's better to be conservative in what you're planning, what you think you're going to make, just in case, because you just don't really know. So when I did that 6 months of like, I had 6 months of savings, if not a penny comes in, not a penny comes my way, I'm going to be okay. And I learned in that 6 months how to be exceptionally budget conscious and frugal when I needed to be, and then also to treat myself when it seemed appropriate too. Like the things that you can be smart about are accommodations when you're working as when you're living as a digital nomad. Accommodations, there's all sorts of ways that you can save a lot of money that way. There's a girl in my business school right now she's doing a year of she's doing mostly Asia, but she is going to do a little bit of Europe at the end of her year of traveling, and she's doing a ton of house sitting, for example. So she's on a house sitting website. She's not paying very much at all for accommodation. So in her budget plan, which we worked together to create, she mapped it out and was like, I don't want to spend a lot of money on accommodations. She's not someone that needs the cushy hotel. She's like, I can do hostels when I can't find a house sitting job. But for the most part, she's house sitting, and she's really flexible that she can kind of go where the house sitting jobs show up. So she happens to be in Vietnam right now. And so she's doing the Lunar New Year celebration at this beautiful house that she's house sitting, which was kind of a sweet deal, right? So I think what's really important is to just get really real about ways you can take care of yourself in the best way possible, but also be really mindful that the money's going to look different. So consider those things, where you're going to live, how you're going to eat, how you're going to get from place to place. If you are someone that's going to need your computer and an internet connection and those things to do whatever work you're doing, don't forget to include that in your budget plan, that you're going to need to have the ability to connect that way. Outside of that, I think, just being aware that it's going to look different. And I went from that corporate job, being a 6-figure job, to literally not earning a penny that first 6 months. So the things that I was kind of used to in my day-to-day lifestyle, I just considered it as a big grand adventure that I was literally only going to have 2 pairs of shoes in my bag, and that's how it was going to go, and I was not going to be buying any more until I knew what was coming next. And I think that that's the important things to consider when creating
Yeah.
a budget, especially in the first year.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. So we've written down our ideas. We've given an understanding of the different types of ways we can make money. We've got a bit of a budget that we can
Yeah.
seem to work off, and at least have some sort of security, knowing we've got a certain amount of time to make money, and we're feeling comfortable in that space. What would be the next thing that we need to think about?
Yeah. So once you're there, I think it's really important to treat this lifestyle as your business also. So it's, coming from that corporate background, and part of the reason I always say that I would never take a moment of that back is I learned really quickly how to market my skill sets, how to consistently stay engaged in education, how to manage my finances. So if you're going to take on this lifestyle of a digital nomad, it's really important that you recognize that you are now your own business. And looking at all of the things that it's going to take, it's really like, it's funny to see pictures of what the digital nomad is. It's like, we're working at a cafe in some beautiful place, and it looks really like, really luxe, that that's like the life. But in reality, you've got to do your own marketing. You've got to do your own client management. You've got to manage your finances, which we talked about. You've got to do all of the things that are going to really allow the business of you to grow while traveling at the same time. So I think that's really the next step, is really looking at what is your business. Even like, let's pretend what you decide to do is the dance class thing, and you're going to travel the world and you're going to teach dance classes everywhere you go. You still will likely need a website. You're going to need a way to promote it. You're going to need a way to take money. You're going to need a way to confirm participants and do your dance classes, whatever that might look like. So, there's like this idea that, especially for creatives, that we're spending all of our time creating, and that's like when things are really, really get good. I actually think it's like you're spending like 20 to 30% of your time creating, and like 70 to 80% of your time working on the business around what you've created. So I think balancing that out and really understanding that, sure, one day when you've got a team of like an accountant and a a marketing person and an SEO manager and all those things, sure, you can just create all day. But when you're really getting started, it's about, I'm going to create the things that are going to allow me to do this. And then I'm going to spend a lot more time really working on building the business of what around what I've created.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an important point, and such a great perspective, and really something that a lot of people don't think about. They just think they're going to be doing everything that they love all of the time. And
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's not that. I mean, I can't wait for the day I have a full time operations manager and taking care of all that
Yeah.
type of stuff so I can focus on the marketing and sales, which is like what I love. So,
Yeah.
um,
Totally.
amazing. So now that we've got that part of it, and we're starting to like get a little bit of momentum, do you have any more tips that we need to be thinking about when traveling?
Yeah, I think the next tips would be, be aware of what the just what the reality is of the places that you're going. Be aware of what's there, what exists there, what you can connect into. If there's communities that you can connect to when you get there to help you along the way. I mean, those are all really good things to do. And then I think the other thing is, don't I'm trying not to curse the word that's coming to me. Like, don't mind F yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't get out there and like be doing it and then all of a sudden go, oh my God, is this really going to work? And I think that oftentimes, once you kind of start the process, I did that 6 months in Spain, and it could have been really easy for me to go, that 6 months was really great. And now I'm going to go back into the next job that's going to, pay me $100,000 a year. Because that's when it starts to get hard. It's like when you're pushing forward and the money's starting to happen and you're starting to be able to make a living, but it's not exactly what it was before when you were earning whatever it was that you were earning in the place that you worked before. So don't get in your head too much and freak out once you kind of get rolling. Really work on building community, connecting to people from place to place where you go, and just trust in yourself. I mean, that's the scary part, just to really put the faith in yourself that you can do it.
100%. And trusting through the times where it gets a little bit tough. I find that
Yeah.
like the toughest part of it, if you can push through there, you get such massive momentum on the other side that
Yeah.
you do start to see quite a big change. So yeah, that's really cool. Really great tips. Is there anything else that you want to dive into in terms of how to make a living as a traveling creative?
I mean, I think we've covered a lot of it. You mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, that a lot of it is mindset, and I believe that so through and through. That's what I believe. And when I'm speaking at retreats or when I'm working with people in my business school, in the business school, the first like several workshops that we do together are all around mindset. Because if you don't believe that you can truly do this thing, it's going to be really hard to stay the course of it. If your worth and if your self-worth is like, if you're telling yourself that this isn't really possible, then it's not going to be possible. So I think that's really important too, before you sit down to even get started. I mean, look, when I left that corporate job, I knew I was really good at that. And people had told me how great I was at that job for so long, but I didn't know what I was good at for myself. And that was a really scary thing to try to think about, was what can I actually do for me? And I mean, I remember publishing my first blog post, and I could tell you like who exactly read it, because I could look at my analytics and be like, oh, someone in North Carolina read it. Oh, that's my mom. Somebody, like that's how it goes at the beginning. But if you stay the course and really have a mindset of belief in yourself and do all of the things that we've talked about, to really work this thing as your business, you can build it and it will work for you.
Yeah, such an important point. And I guess the biggest challenge is, working on that type of stuff isn't as sexy as the how to grow an Instagram following to 100,000 followers in 6 months type of thing. So
Sure.
it's understanding that the important part is mindset. So yeah, such a valuable
Yeah.
point. I love that.
Yeah.
And is there, when you are working with people within your school and all of that type of stuff, what would you say would be the most common mistakes or challenges that they come up against when they're getting started?
I think one of the biggest, maybe not a mistake, but one of the biggest things that I see when people come into the school is this idea, it's all around social media, that like the thing they need to do, you know, just to what you said, is get 100,000 people on Instagram interested in what they're doing. And then if they do that, everything will just come together. That's probably one of the biggest misconceptions. I was having a conversation with a girl yesterday, and she has launched this like really cool wine tasting tours. And she's like, you know, I've been working on my social media following, and I feel like I've done everything right there, and no one's booking, and I don't understand. I thought I had this thing right now that I've got the social media following. But the reality is that's not the only thing that you got to do to make your thing work. You know, there's all sorts of other ways to cultivate community and to build interest in what you're offering. And I think we often forget about how important it is to do the real life connection. So I asked her, for example, had she gone out to the wineries that she was going to be taking people to, and asked them to share with their email lists about her women's weekends winery tours. And she's like, well, I hadn't even thought about that. I was just going to buy the tickets and take the people there after I booked them through my social media. So remembering to do that real life connection. So I was like, girl, get in the car. She lives out in that area. I was like, go drive around and meet the people that own the wineries that you're going to be taking people to, and ask them to help you. So I think that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions that people have when they come into the school. I think the other thing is the idea that that people don't know that we're going to spend as much time as we do on the money mindset, and we spend a lot of time on how to make money, just like what we've been talking about. Really mapping out your expenditures, what you're expecting to earn, setting up templates for all of that. And then we do a lot of work on just mentality around money as well, especially with women. I find women come into the school and they're like, you know, they've got all these ideas around how money works, and they've not really talked about it very much. And so we do a lot of work on just abundance mindset. And I find that oftentimes, especially with women, they come in and they're just starting to figure out how to get really comfortable and kind of leaning into that mindset of, yes, I can make money, and yes, I'm going to do this for myself. So that's probably the two things: the social media thing and the money thing.
Definitely. That's such an important point. I think, you know, sometimes it's easy for a lot of people to, well, I wouldn't say easy, but easier for them to make the money. It's like keeping that money, and always
Yeah.
having that abundance is the harder part, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, you know, I think sometimes the universe kind of has a sense of humor with us, and it's like, okay, here's the thing you asked for, like, here it is. Now you're doing it. And then sometimes it gets a little funky, and it doesn't continue to be what you thought it might be, and you have to change course. When I first, after that 6 months when I had gone to Spain, I had been someone who was, my whole life I was super interested in fashion. And so I thought my next move was going to be working in fashion in some way. And I was doing a lot of like editorial styling while I was traveling. And then I had moved back to New Orleans, which is where I'm from, and was kind of like, okay, I'm going to keep traveling, but I think I also want to open a shop and feature independent designers that I've like met around the world. And I did that, and I ran that shop for 6 months, and I was like, haha, no, this is not for me. Like, I thought this was going to be for me, and the universe helped me get this thing going, and I planned the whole thing financially and marketing and did all the things we just talked about. And I realized really quickly it wasn't a failure for me to close the shop. It was just not really what I was supposed to be doing, and it was actually going to hinder me from going out and doing the exact things that I had just done when I went out and met the independent designers that I was featuring by traveling. So I think sometimes that's important to keep in mind too, is things are going to ebb and flow, and try things out. And if they don't work, it doesn't mean you can't change course. So
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree. And I think we could keep talking for hours on so many different topics, but we're going to wrap it up here today. And I just want to say thank you for joining us, and
yeah,
I guess sharing with people how they can authentically express themselves as they are, and, you know, especially if they are a creative, and figure out a way to build a lifestyle and a business around that, so that they can, you know, hopefully live their life with a lot of passion and fulfillment as well. So yeah,
yeah,
thanks for coming on and joining us. And
my
let
pleasure.
I'm sure there'll be people at home who want to continue the conversation with you as well. Where can they go to do that?
Yeah, so my website is Wee Wee Girl, which is OUIWE, like the French word. And then you and me is the we. So OUIWE girl.com. And that's the same for all my socials and all that good stuff too. So that's where to find me.
Amazing. That'll be linked up down below. So I encourage everyone to go check that out. So yeah, once again, thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll chat again soon.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here.